It was like they've never played the game before.
Are you going to take it?
Yeah, that's fine.
I gave my phone for Dan here.
The Airport Authority. Everyone can please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First and foremost, we want to welcome our newest board member, Daniel Bean. He's already taken his oath, and he doesn't want a ceremonial picture, so we'll move right along.
Thank you.
Let's do a roll call. Board member Bean.
Here.
Board member Dedge.
Here.
Board member Cash Chapman.
Present.
Board member DePola.
Here.
And Chair Primrose is here. We have a quorum. First order of business is then the approval of the minutes. The minutes for the 12-17 workshop and the 12-17 regular board meeting were provided to all the board members ahead of time. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Second. Comment.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah, there were a few things that I emailed over, and I don't have those in front of me, but I believe, thank you. I had some edits, particularly asking to strike some of the kind of the commentary under the financial report. Particularly like kind of the opinion portions. Under Part 8, we had board elections for vice. This is for the workshop, I believe, that my edits were. Under 8, we had vice chair, but I was appointed for the TPO, but that wasn't recorded. Under the key discussion points, I think you had said, Nick, public comment could be allowed on a discretionary basis for each topic as well, which wasn't on there. But I think we could omit the key discussion points under item 7, board policy and procedures, just to keep it to the actionable portions. Then on item 11, under staff reports, there was a lot of discussion on the liquidated damages, but the figures discussed in the staff report minutes were not actually discussed at the meeting. I think that's information that was provided subsequently. I provided those to Courtney and Linda, but I would recommend those edits. I can summarize those. I have them available, and I can share them. I couldn't share them outside of the meeting, though.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is for all of us being able to see what those are. I guess unless anybody has any objection to just, taking Mario's recommended edits. Any objection to that? All right, so we would need.
I have to amend my motion to approve the minutes with Mario's edits.
All right, do we have a second on that?
Second.
All right, any further discussion or debate on the minutes? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of approving as amended, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. All right, agenda approval. I'm going to take a little bit of chair discretion here for a couple of things. One, to all the members of the general aviation community, your voices have been heard. You've made an impact on me. I assume you've made an impact on the rest of the board members with relation to the T-hanger use draft policy. Part of this, and if you go back to the December board meeting, we wanted to have an open process, an engaging process where all the members and tenants of the airport felt like they were being heard and had an opportunity to have their voices kind of considered. As the board, we can only talk when we're here in a public meeting. So none of us have had a chance to kind of openly discuss all of the comments that were made to each of us individually. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that everybody probably has the same concerns and an appetite to maybe extend the process a little bit. And I'll just tell you where I'm coming from. And it's hard to see, but I went through our lease, and every single provision that was raised to me as a concern is a column at the top. And then I went through what the FAA says about each of those provisions, what our airport proposed says about it, and then 11 other airports on what they say on every single provision. And there isn't consistency, which isn't surprising. And there's a whole spectrum of the various things on non-aeronautical storage, on right to inspect, access, you name it. Every airport in the state of Florida is different. Nobody has the same. But the one thing that was apparent to me is that we can do better. We can find a compromised policy that the airport can live with, that meets all the FAA requirements and assurances, that treats everybody fairly, that allows the airport a chance to enforce and go after those that abuse the storage of non-aeronautical items, so that we don't have a super long wait list. And so what I'm going to propose to the board on changing the agenda is as follows. I do want to keep the executive director search. I understand it's a brief update. We do have the results of the internal investigation, and the outside counsel that did that is here from New York. So I'd like to move him to number 2 following the executive director search. I believe the logo selection will be a short discussion, and I'd rather not continue that, so I'll move that to 3. On the T-hanger use policy, because everybody did show up, I don't want to not give you an opportunity if you want to speak on it, but I'm going to recommend that we do not vote on the policy and instead direct Courtney and General Counsel to hold a public workshop with everybody that wants to come. What I've asked Courtney to do is essentially go through all the other airports in Florida, put it up on a screen so that we can see what everybody else is doing. We can figure out which ones we like, which ones we don't like, and maybe we can all come to agreement on what that language is. But have a public workshop, take everybody's input in one meeting, and then come back and potentially vote in March on a draft policy that we can all live with. We're not going to agree on everything, but if we can agree to disagree on things and live with an adopted policy, I think that's the best end result for everybody. So we can hold public comment on the T-hanger use policy, but since we're not taking a vote, what I would ask is that everybody kind of limit their comments. Part of that is also we've got a hard stop at 11 a.m. for the opening of the new T-hangers, and we still need 20 minutes to do staff reports. So what I'll kind of do when we get to the T-hanger use policy section is when we get to around the 10:35 time frame, I'm going to call an end to public comment on the T-hanger use policy so that we can get into staff reports and be done promptly at 11. So if you don't want to speak now because you know you'll have an opportunity at a workshop held by Courtney and at a future meeting in March, I wanted to give you that heads up now so you can go to your day jobs or anything else you want to do. If you want to stick around because you do want to speak when we get to that point, certainly welcome that as well. So With that, that would be my proposed change to the agenda, if anybody has any thoughts or changes to that.
I consent to your proposal to amend the agenda as stated.
I mean, honestly, I don't,
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought okay, let's do this first.
I don't think we're gonna be able to get even to it with the executive search ethics and logo.
You're too pessimistic.
But, well, I'm leaving 20 minutes. But I'd like the opportunity for us to be able to discuss openly as well. Also, the workshop, I'm assuming that's something for us, not just for staff, correct?
It would be publicly noticed, but there would be no board action. So to the effect that a board, multiple board members want to go to that, but not, we're not going to require it to be a board meeting, because trying to get a workshop scheduled in the next 2 weeks, so that we've got plenty of time to take everybody's input, put a new draft proposal out there in time for the March meeting, is not going to be possible. So yeah, it'll be publicly noticed, and you can, any board member can show up to it, but it won't be any meeting that will vote on anything.
Well, if we get to it, I'd like to reserve the right to at least be able to discuss it.
I think we'll have opportunity for board discussion when we get to that. So, any other objections to amending? Okay. We'll go with the agenda as approved, amended as approved. Linda had mentioned to me that we, I guess, only adopted the workshop meeting minutes. So can we get a motion to approve the regular board meeting minutes as presented?
No, to approve the last board minutes.
Do we have a second? Any discussion or debate? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Those minutes are approved. Okay, so now we're on the amended agenda. Business partner updates. Commissioner Taylor, any quick updates from the
Yes,
commission?
I'll be brief. I know we have a hard stop. Good morning, everyone. It's so great to see a nice full board. I just wanted to share that last week we were in Tallahassee and we celebrated St. Johns County Day. We have not had St. Johns County Day for our county in many, many, many years. It was a very exciting time to really showcase how amazing our county is. And what I did want to share briefly is that as we met with our local legislators, we did also mention that St. Johns County is one of 2 counties out of 67 in the entire state that has an elected airport authority board. And we strongly recommended with everyone that we do go to an appointed board. So I did want to just share that we are going to look at moving forward and how that can happen. But great to see everybody, and I'll look forward to the 11 o'clock ceremony.
Commissioner Taylor, if I can ask you just on the appointed, is it purely appointed by the county commission or a mix of governor?
I think the way it's been, probably the governor, I would assume.
Okay.
I would think. So,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Byers, or anyone from Atlantic Aviation on this? All right, thank you. Mr. Graham, on behalf of SAPO.
It'll be Brent. I'm Cameron, President. Don't give him a great president, though. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, and welcome, sir, to you. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to have this engagement that we've had recently. So it means a lot. As you can't tell, if you can't tell that the membership here is very, very passionate about this airport. It goes back a long way, so it means a lot. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to continuing that.
I appreciate that. Mr. McKendrick, anything from Northrop?
Good morning. Just want to take a quick opportunity to introduce myself. I'm Caitlin Lewis from Northrop Grumman. I do government relations on behalf of Northrop Grumman Corporation and cover down on the southeast of the United States. I am housed in Melbourne, but I get to St. Augustine quite frequently, and your neighbors over there are quite pleased with the board's activity and way that we're continuing to move forward. So I just wish you the best of luck with your pack schedule today. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. And then Mr. Deputy.
AOPA has no comment.
Thank you. All right. So let's go on to the consent agenda, the financial report. Is Connie going to give the presentation? Connie, please come up.
Good morning. The financial highlights for December. Total operating revenues for December were $470,000, coming in around $21,000 below budget, primarily due to the continued reduction of fuel revenue. December's lease revenue budget was declined. The lease revenue budget included expected revenue on the new T hangars, which were not yet completed. Operating agreements exceeded budget slightly, but were not enough to offset the declines. Year-to-date operating revenues totaled $1.39 million, falling $58,000 below budget, largely reflecting the 3 months of below budget fuel activity. Fuel costs remained favorable and consistent, but consistently below budget due to the reduced revenue. Year-to-date gross profit is $1.25 million, trailing the budget by $31,000, but still consistent with overall revenue activity. Operating expenses for December totaled $387,000, exceeding the budget by $27,900. The primary driver was professional services, which ran $45,000 over budget, with smaller increases in repair and maintenance and government fees. These were partially offset by continued savings in our personnel, utilities, insurance, and other general operating categories. On a year-to-date basis, operating expenses remained $64,000 under budget, despite the average in December. Bottom line, December's operating income before debt service and depreciation was $37,000, falling short of a monthly budget of $39,000. However, year-to-date operating income remains favorable at $215,000, exceeding our budget by $32,000. This reflects a strong performance in October and November. Non-operating revenues for December fell below budget, primarily due to the timing of grant reimbursements brought about by the delay in the T hangars. Overall income before depreciation was $420,000 for December, slightly below budget due to grant timing, but year-to-date income before depreciation totals at $887,000. The authority's balance sheet remains strong, with total assets of $83.3 million and a net position of $80.3 million, up from November due to grant-related inflows. Cash decreased slightly to $4.45 million, consistent with normal operating cycles. Accounts payable dropped sharply from November, indicating timely payment of outstanding invoices. While December's results were overall stable, a couple of items continue to warrant attention. Firstly, the fuel revenue continues to underperform budget due to only one operating tank, and grant reimbursements remain behind schedule but are consistent with the project delays.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? All right. Thank you, Connie. Okay, unfinished business. We'll go to item number 1, the executive director search. Jerry, I believe this is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I'm just going to provide a brief update on the executive search. At this time, the evaluation scorecards are in the final stages of review and consolidation. This reflects the board's commitment to a thorough, fair, and structured selection process aligned with our governance standards and strategic priorities. I'm pleased to report that the search remains on schedule and fully aligned with the approved timeline. The process is progressing as planned, and we are maintaining strong coordination with our staff to ensure due diligence at each step. Additional details and recommended next steps will be presented at the next board meeting, and we appreciate the board's engagement and continued support.
All right.
That concludes my report.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for Jerry on this? All right, moving on. We'll go to the results of the internal investigation. Mr. Vaca?
Should I go to the podium?
Yeah, please, if you don't mind.
I could do it right here.
If you want to do it there, it's fine. Whatever you feel more comfortable with.
We're comfortable at the podium, sir.
All right.
Good morning. Good morning. And thank you for the opportunity to present here today. Just by way of brief background, principally for the assembled audience, I'm a member of the Government and Corporate Investigations Practice Group at the law firm of Lippis Mathias. I'm joined here today by my colleagues Chris Walker and Jeff Kemp.
Hempf, who had been previously retained to serve as general counsel to the authority. I was appointed by the board, this board, I believe in October, to conduct an internal investigation, which I have done. Just by way of quick summary in terms of where we are today, as you all know, I've had individual conversations with each one of the board members, including the chairman, concerning my preliminary findings. It's my intent today to not give you the full load of what we discovered. I recognize and appreciate the time element here, but to give you a brief overview and public a brief overview of our findings. But before I do that, while I mentioned my firm affiliation, I also want to mention that we have purposely created a wall at Lippes Mathias, so I have not conversed with Chris or Jeff about our findings, about our investigation, although Jeff has been very instrumental in helping me arrange interviews and also has been instrumental in providing staff research on Florida statutes. So I just want to make the point that I was hired as an investigator to conduct this investigation. My background, I think it's important to discuss my background quickly. Before I made my way to Lippes Mathias in 2009, so I've been here for 16 years now. But early in my career, I spent 20 years as a prosecutor, 10 years as an assistant DA, chief of the grand jury bureaus for 7 of those 10 years in Erie County, which is Buffalo, New York, so like Duval or Erie. But I was an assistant DA there for 10 years, tried many homicide cases during that tenure. In 1988, I was fortunate to be appointed, nominated by President Ronald Reagan to serve as the United States Attorney for the Western District of New York, which is the 17 westernmost counties in New York State. There's 4 judicial districts in New York State. The Western District is the furthest west. I was confirmed by the United States Senate and served until President Clinton's election in 1992 and resigned in June of 1993. I spent a brief tenure in the private sector, having been in law enforcement for 15 years at that point. I wasn't ready to give up. In 1994, I ran for the office of Attorney General in the state of New York and won along with Governor George Pataki in 1994, was elected the 62nd Attorney General of the great state of New York. In that time period, and lastly relevant to my experience and background, I had the great pleasure to argue a case before the United States Supreme Court where I secured a 9-0 victory on behalf of the people of the state of New York. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for trusting me with this important investigation. I think it's important, to quickly point out the steps that I took to get here. And I'm not going to give you a summary of all of these interviews. And I should say that I have prepared, and it's still tweaking, a written executive summary that will reflect the conversation that we previously had, reflect my comments here today. Mr. Chairman, you and I spoke about the prospect of a broader, comprehensive scope that's annotated with statements or a summary of statements, statutes, documents that we've uncovered. So I'll leave that to the board to ascertain whether or not you want me to do that as the next step. But here's what we did. So we interviewed in no particular order. We interviewed Aviation Counsel, Mr. Chad Roberts. We interviewed former General Counsel Jeremiah Blocker, along with his colleague Lisa Miles. We interviewed former board chairman and former board member Robert Olson. And I guess right now, as I move to indicating that we also interviewed board member Michelle Cash Chapman, I just want to make sure that when I'm speaking of the board in my report here, in my factual findings, I'm not referring to this board. I'm referring to the board that was in place from January of 2023 to the time that the 3 members resigned in 2025. So that's the board. When I'm speaking of the board, that's the board I'm speaking of. And there were various chairmen at that point in time. I believe Mr. Olson was chairman. I believe Mr. Clark was a brief chairman. And I believe Ms. Ludlow was also a chairman at that point in time. Though that's the board that I'm referring to in my report. But we did interview this board member, Michelle Cash Chapman, because her role here in the context of our investigation was important. We interviewed Jennifer Leota. I don't see her here today, but we interviewed her along in the presence of her counsel on 2 separate occasions, one in person here in our office in Jacksonville, and another opportunity via video conference. We also interviewed Matt Leota at the request of his counsel, Mr. Nick Morcom. We interviewed Interim Executive Director Courtney Pittman, and I got a gratuitous phone call from a renter, a T-Hanger renter, who asked for anonymity. All of you know who it is because I told you individually in our one-on-one conversations, but he asked for anonymity in terms of this public presentation, but he made a gratuitous phone call to me. And I think, so I'm not going to summarize that, just dwell on too much of what he told me, but what I gleaned from him and what I've gleaned from the totality of my investigation, and you've mentioned it here today, and I'm happy that you're still reviewing the T-Hanger policy, and I applaud SAPA for their role and involvement in it. But I think if I could summarize 8 weeks of work and interviews and reviewing documents, and let me just tell you about the documents. We reviewed board meeting minutes, transcripts. We reviewed Mr. Roberts' billing invoices. We reviewed select emails. The history, electronic history here is enormous. We looked at selected emails. We looked at various correspondence. We reviewed Modern Aero billing for Cirrus aircraft. We reviewed cash payment receipts, and I'll come back to that in a moment. Cash payment receipts for T-Hanger rentals. We reviewed election records relevant to the 2022 election and various Florida statutes and regulations. But perhaps the most important document that we reviewed was the state attorney's prosecutorial summary. Prosecutorial summary of the investigation into the 3 board members who were accused of violating the Sunshine Law. And why I say this is an important document, so I diverted my thought a moment ago as I was talking about the T-Hanger policy. If I had to summarize our findings, I would say that in the broadest sense, what we have discovered here from the election of 2022 through the resignation of the 3 board members that were accused of the Sunshine Law violations, we observed a dysfunctional governance model. That dysfunction had many elements to it. But that dysfunction, many reasons, many causes. But I would say one of the root causes, if not the root cause, was the T-Hanger policy and the enforcement of the T-Hanger policy. And the conflict, if you will, between the tenants, represented by SAPA, and the authority, represented by the board and executive directors. It's interesting that in the prosecutorial summary, when I first read it 8 weeks ago, I was taken by the fact that they begin their report by talking about Modern Aero's manipulation of the T-Hanger policy, which was a little strange to me because they were investigating Sunshine Law violations, but yet they talked at length about Modern Aero and, indeed, in the broader sense, T-Hanger policies and the conflict that the T-Hanger policy has created. The dysfunctional governance model it resulted, in my estimation, in a period of 2 years, 3 executive directors. Ed Wollner was relieved at the first meeting of the newly constituted board in January of 2023. And I know that I'm telling many of you something that you've already known in the history that you've lived over the last 24 months. But this is all part of the context of my investigation. we went from Ed Woolner, who had been here for 25 years, and I'm not commenting on his tenure, the length of it, or what he accomplished or didn't accomplish, but he was here for a long time. And then subsequent to Woolner, we've had 3 additional interim executive directors. And that, to me, all due respect to Mr. Pittman, to me, that reflects the dysfunction of the governance model. I think that there was a consensus. So our investigation reveals that the candidates that ran on a slate in 2022, and you all know that, I'm not going to get into that, and as I've told the board members individually, in my estimation, there's nothing wrong with running a slate. We looked at the Florida election law filings. There's nothing wrong in my estimation. Look, I was a politician for a long time, so I understand putting a slate together. I understand raising money, and I understand, collaborating in a political sense. What I don't understand necessarily is spending over $100,000, as we know Ms. Leota told us that she did, to run a race to sit at one of these seats, or the over $100,000 that SAPA through a PAC raised to influence the election for people at this seat. So really, the dysfunction of the governance model pulled a string through, and it really begins in 2022 when these outside forces came together politically. Now, I don't know what happened in the past. I don't know, prior boards, before 2022, but I see what happened here. And the dysfunction of the governance model truly began with the 2022 election. The goal was to effectuate change, and that change was most evident in the relief of Woolner. Now, I understand that his contract was going to be up at midpoint of the year in any event, but he was put out to pasture in January 2023 on paid administrative leave until his string ran out. And then we had a succession of interim executive directors. And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, to me, that's part of the dysfunction because of the conflict, if you will, or at least the disagreement over the T-Hanger policy. And it really so in my estimation, the disagreement over what the policy looks like and how the policy is enforced has put, at least over the last 2+ years, has put the tenants and the users in direct conflict with the board and mostly the day-to-day leadership of the authority. And in my estimation, that is not a healthy model. But that is the model that existed from the election of 2022 until this board was appointed. Mr. Kevin Harvey lasted maybe 3 months. I'm not going to get into why he resigned, but the fact of the matter is, what's relevant here is that he only lasted about 3 months. He was succeeded by Jamie Topp, who, my understanding through our investigation, was a member of SAPA, so he was also a customer, if you will, or a tenant, if you will, at some point in time. We've reached out to Mr. Topp. He never responded to our solicitation to interview him. And he, by the way, in terms of the election of 2022, Mr. Topp was integral in the discussions in leading up to the campaign election of 2022 in the formation of the slate. What I find one of the many curious things that I've uncovered here is that in 2022, Topp and the slate, which was Ms. Cash Chapman, Mr. Clark, and Ms. Leota, that he was aligned with the slate. Topp was aligned with the slate in 2022, at least until he decided he was going to run against Jennifer Leota. But then, when Harvey resigns, Topp is appointed, including with the vote of Jennifer Leota, to be the interim executive director. The dysfunctional governance model is further highlighted by the fact that by May of 2024, so about a year, he's in the seat for about a year, Topp. By May of 2024, it becomes known to various members of the authority, the staff, and to select board members that Topp was not always present. He was sort of an absentee executive director. And more disturbingly, it became known that he was using a modern Aero Cirrus aircraft to fly regularly from the Authority to Miami, where we've been told he had his own business in Miami. And this is while Ms. Leota is on the board. To her credit, she did make known to Mr. Blocker in May of 2024, April or May of 2024, she made known to Mr. Blocker that TOP was using the Cirrus aircraft. As I said a few moments ago, we looked at Modern Aero's records that she provided. Ms. Leota provided those records. And it wasn't just a once or twice or an occasional usage of the Cirrus. It was regular and consistent, I believe 47 trips on the Cirrus, where, according to the records, Modern Aero billed the interim executive director $98,000 to use that Cirrus aircraft to go back and forth. Now, what I haven't looked at, Mr. Chairman, I haven't looked at the credit cards. So I don't know how the fuel was paid for. I don't know, whether there were landing fees and how those were paid for, or whether Modern Aero paid those late. But I could see from the billing records provided by Modern Aero that there were the total of those 47 trips, they billed out at $98,000. I don't know if that's market rate or not, but those are the numbers that they provided to me. When these allegations, when these facts, the absentee management of TOP, coupled with the Cirrus aircraft usage, the board acted swiftly and appointed Mr. Pittman to be the interim executive director. Now, I think it's important to just take a step back. Mr. Pittman was not a stranger to the Authority. He had previously worked for Robinson Aviation, which is the FAA contractor that controls the tower. He worked in the tower for a considerable period of time. But interestingly, his introduction to the Authority was Jamie Top. Because when Jamie Top became the interim executive director, perhaps, and I'm speculating here because he was not always here, he needed somebody who knew the Authority, and he asked Mr. Pittman, who was an employee at the tower at the time, to serve in the role of Director of Operations, and that's January of 2024 that Mr. Pittman comes on board. I'll talk about that a bit in a moment, but the governance dysfunction that I speak of manifested itself even at the time of Mr. Pittman's appointment as interim executive director. So there was a hurry-up offense. Ms. Cash-Chapman and I we've talked about football. She's a Patriots fan. Hope you don't mind me disclosing that. I'm a Bills fan. Actually, I think that we interviewed you the week of the playoff game.
Do the
Here in
Patriots play
Jackson.
offense?
I'm sorry?
Do the Patriots play offense?
Oh,
They didn't last week.
but they were there.
They were there.
Kudos to them for being there. But there was a hurry-up offense played when Jamie Top abruptly and appropriately resigns. I don't know if he would have been fired if he hadn't resigned, but he appropriately resigned. So it was a hurry-up offense. Blocker and Miles, and later in time, Chad Roberts began a dialogue with Mr. Pittman, who's on staff, Director of Operations, to serve in the role. This is on May 9th, May 10th. 10th is a Friday. I believe Top resigned on Thursday the 9th. There's a conversation that Blocker has with the former board members, much as I had conversations with you all over the last week or so. He had one-on-ones with the board over the weekend. But because it's not transcribed, I'm relying on Mr. Blocker's recollection of those conversations. And Mr. Blocker tells me that he advised the 5 board members in these one-on-ones the need to appoint an interim executive director, that he was recommending Courtney Pittman. Where it's a little fuzzy is whether or not the economic terms that had been discussed with Blocker and Mr. Pittman, whether the economic terms were brought to the attention of the board. And that's why Ms. Cash Chapman is important, because she was there. She was one of the board members who Blocker contacted. My recollection is, Michelle, that you didn't remember the precise nature of those conversations. Blocker believes that he did have some discussion about the economic terms, because he also told me that there were two board members that he had spoken to that did not agree with the economic terms that Blocker was talking about over the course of the weekend. What we know did happen, because there's a record of it, is on May 13th, at a board meeting here, there's a vote. The motion, Ms. Ludlow is the chairperson at the time. The motion is, in my estimation, inartfully presented to the board, because the motion essentially is, shall we authorize, and I have the transcript in my bag, I'm not going to bore you and waste your time pulling it out and reading it, but I'll go read the transcript. But the motion essentially is, shall we vote, let's have a vote on whether or not we're going to authorize the general counsel, Blocker, to draft a contract for Pittman. There is no discussion about terms in that May 13th board meeting. The only term that's tangentially related to the board is that Blocker was saying it would be 6 months, no more than 6 months. And that's critical, because I hate to keep pointing out to you, but you played a critical role here. Ms. Cash Chapman, in that meeting, questions the length of the interim term because of the larger search that Mr. Judge is now conducting. But the search was, at that time, contemplated in May of 2024 to be a more extensive search. And she expressed reservations about 6 months in view of the search. Parenthetically, she also voted no to authorizing Blocker to draft a contract. But the motion, in my view, it's not just my view, it's the plain language of the transcript. The motion was just simply to allow Blocker to draft a contract to present to the board for approval. Now, one of the things, I think the most critical allegation that Jennifer Leota makes in her letter, her October, her resignation letter, October 21 of 2025, her resignation letter. Well, she makes a lot of allegations, and I'll just touch briefly on a few of them, but we looked at all of them. We looked at all of the allegations, and quite frankly, that was, the beginning point of our factual inquiry, her allegations. What the reality is, so she alleges that Mr. Pittman decided his own salary, that he imposed upon the staff. Michelle Spittler at the time, I think, was controller, and I've since learned through our investigation that Mr. Pittman did hire Michelle Spittler, so that's an element of our consideration here. But the allegation, Leota allegation, is that Pittman, directly through staff, decided what his salary was going to be. I don't find that to be credible. However, the context of the salary is still fuzzy. There's no authorization on May 13th other than to draft a contract. I know, because I have the draft contract, that the very next day, Mr. Lisa Miles, I believe, sends Mr. Pittman a draft of the contract. Curiously, in the draft contract, and I've asked everybody about this, including Mr. Pittman, the compensation is fixed at $30,833.33 a month. I'm not a math wizard, but I did it quickly in the back of an envelope. That's $370,000 annualized. And I've asked everybody who has touched that document, so Miles, Blocker, Pittman, where'd that number come from? And the best that I could come up with, because by the way, that's not the number that he was ultimately paid. But the best that I could come up with is that in that window where Top is gone, there's no executive director, Roberts is advising that under FAA rules, we need an executive director. I'm not so sure whether the rules say that it's got to be somebody that's, that knows what they're doing, or just somebody in the seat. But Roberts is saying, so I don't know whether, Roberts or Blocker could have served as executive director. I just don't know that. And I really didn't ask Chad that question. But there's a rush that weekend after, and I didn't mean that as a knock to Mr. Pittman, but there's a rush after Top leaves to fill the seat. Pittman's in the authority as the employee, DO. What I get from my conversation with Courtney is that he knew that the authority was back against the wall and they wanted his services. My phrase, another sports analogy, he was going to swing for the fence. And he was making demands in that time period for what the number should be. Blocker tells me he's got a slightly different interpretation of Mr. Pittman's thought process. Of course, he's not Pittman. This is Blocker interpreting Pittman's thought process. He said that Mr. Pittman's demand was so high, frankly, he told me, that it was, outrageously high, and it was more than the $30,833, but that his demand was so high because, according to Mr. Blocker, Mr. Pittman said, I'm going to give up my job at the authority, and this is an important point. I'm going to give up my job at the authority. I'm sorry, at the tower. Thank you. At the tower. Justice Scalia corrected me once too, so you're in good company. I'm going to give up my role at the tower for this interim job, so I'm not going to put my family at risk. So, I need as much as I can get. That's Blocker's interpretation. Again, Blocker doesn't recall what number they settled at. But put a pin in the question of his employment at the tower, because I think that's a critical piece here. So we do know there's a June 5th, 2024 email. Ms. Leota references it in her letter, where Blocker advises the HR team that he should be paid $10 a month for his salary as DO, which is $120,000 a year. 10 a month for, so let me come back to that in a moment. 10 a month for the DO salary of $120,000 a year. 15 a month for the ED salary of $180,000 a year, which equates to, in Blocker's words, approximately $25,000 a month. I don't know why it's approximate. 15 and 10 is 25, but it's approximately $25,000 a month plus a $500 stipend for educational expenses. But the email doesn't talk about the frequency of the stipend. Why I think so? Why I said to put a pin in the concept of his tower employment. Frankly, and while Jennifer Leota, in her letter, she's got a section about unauthorized dual employment. All due respect to Mr. Pittman, I believe so. The salary question is nebulous. What is not nebulous about the salary question is that the board never took up the issue of the contract again. Now, who's that on? Is it on Blocker? Is it on Pittman? Blocker tells Pittman in this June 5th letter, you got to go back to the board. The board never once, again, raised, even though the motion was to draft the contract, there was never again another argument or debate or presentation about the contract before the board. And that means that the board never approved the salary or contract because no contract was ever presented. Now, there's a disagreement between Pittman and Blocker about what happened to that document that went to Blocker on May 14th. He said that he was going to present it to his lawyer. Blocker says, we never got comments back. We never got it back. Exactly what happened, and again, I haven't asked for all of the emails between them, but I think Mr. Pittman will acknowledge that Lisa sent him the contract, that he said that he was going to have his lawyer review it, but at the end of the day, what is absolutely certain is the contract never came back, never was signed, and it was never authorized by the board. Now, perhaps there's a reason why the board wanted to leave Mr. Pittman in limbo, which in my estimation goes to its governance dysfunction. I'm not going to read it to you, but Mr. Blocker provided me with the text exchange between him and Chairwoman Ludlow in June of 2024, after the filings had been made to run for seats on the board, when she advised Blocker that Mr. Tucker and her are running unopposed, and I could read it to you if you want, but I can summarize it as well, that big changes, oh boy, big changes are going to happen. So I don't know why Pittman's employment status was never again raised, but I know that it was never approved. So the question of salary, and I understand that the nebulous nature of the salary that was agreed to in May and June of 2024 remained in place until October of this year, when I understand that Mr. Pittman came to this board and said that he would take a salary reduction, although it's also my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that there still is not a contract in place. So today, after 4 months, there's still not a contract in place for the interim director position. I believe that in terms of all of the allegations, so let me just touch on a few of the others. She raises the sexual harassment, she being Ms. Leota, raises the sexual harassment allegations lodged against Mr. Pittman. You all are privy to the fact that that matter was investigated and resolved. I'm not going to further opine on that, other than the fact that it was over. It was over at the time that she made the allegations. There was a resolution, in my estimation, to the satisfaction of the complainant. I didn't speak to the complainant, but I could see the documents that I'm not going to speak of directly. But I could see that that matter was resolved in a fashion that the complainant was satisfied. She makes broad allegations about both Mr. Roberts and Mr. Pittman's role, claiming that they're acting unethically. The one allegation that she makes that gave me some pause was the question about Mr. Pittman seeking reimbursement for his outside legal expenses in the context of the state attorney investigation. Leota references in her letter that Mr. Roberts was recommending to the board at the time, that Mr. Barksdale, who at least represented Mr. Pittman in the context of the investigation, that Mr. Barksdale's legal fees should be covered by the authority. Ms. Leota claims that Roberts was really representing Pittman's interest and that he was acting unethically vis-a-vis his role with the board. I find no merit in that. He's an attorney who's representing the board. He's giving advice about what he thinks is in the best interest of the authority, recommending that Mr. Pittman's lawyer be compensated. I have to say that, he did provide me, interestingly, so look, there's a ton of interesting things here, but he did provide me with a memo drafted by Ms. Lacadera, a 2008 memo. So before, I think she was with the city attorney at the time, and under similar circumstances, a sunshine law investigation. She writes a lengthy memo to the city council saying that the city council should pay for the outside legal fees for the members of the board who were being subpoenaed to a grand jury. Interestingly, Lacadera, many years later, this was in 2008, that she writes this opinion, which I find some merit in her opinion, but many years later now she finds herself, as an interim general counsel here. She did not make that opinion while she was here, but she made it in 2008 while she was with the city council. So I looked into it because it did seem to me that was, of all of the things that Jennifer Leota raises, this wasn't the hottest button, but it was, an issue that needed to be pursued. I've taken a look at Florida statute. Lecadera's memo talks about the common law principles that support the payment of fees under similar circumstances. Fast forward, I know that this board authorized the payment of those legal fees in October or November of 2025. So in my estimation, it's a moot issue. But I find no merit in Jennifer Leota's allegations that Chad Roberts was acting unethically his interest adverse to the board. She goes on with a long laundry list of complaints about T-Hanger policy enforcement, how Modern Arrow is being singled out, and she visits most of those complaints on Pittman and Roberts together. Again, I have not found any unethical conduct on the part of Mr. Roberts, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, there's a commission in the state of Florida that can review if somebody wants to complain about a lawyer's ethics. They can file a complaint with the commission and have the commission thoroughly review it. I wasn't charged with doing that. The other allegation that she makes is that Mr. Roberts is excessively involved in the affairs of the authority beyond his role as aviation counsel. As I said in my opening, we looked at his billing records. Chad might be surprised to hear this, but from January of 2023 through the December invoice for 2025, he billed $277,577.79. I think I did the math on that, and it comes out to about $8,000, $9,000 a month. She makes an allegation that he's acting beyond the scope of his engagement. I looked at the records, and quite frankly, there is nothing that pops off his billing records that would indicate to me that he was acting beyond the scope. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, one of the recommendations, while I'm on this topic, I would recommend to you that the Aviation Council's role be more clearly defined, and that role be more clearly defined in the context of the role of the General Counsel. I did not look at Blocker's billing to see if there was any crossover, any duplication between Blocker's efforts and Roberts' efforts, because it's my understanding that Blocker was on a monthly retainer. But I haven't looked at Blocker's record, so I haven't compared 2 years worth of records to see if he was doing the same thing that Blocker was doing. But I'm saying on the face of those records, I don't see anything inappropriate other than the fact that I see an expansive view of the role of the Aviation Council, and not so sure how the Aviation Council fits within the scheme of the General Counsel. And I say that reluctantly, and Chad and I have had this conversation on several occasions. I say reluctantly because, lippus with eyes, we're not looking to take it, but work away from anybody. We're looking to do what's in the best interest of this authority. But I do believe that going back to governance, that a more appropriate governance model would be for the Aviation Council to report up through the General Counsel. I think that would make more sense. I know that I've exceeded my time, so let me just get to what I think is the most pressing issue, albeit perhaps now moot. The most pressing issue that she raises in her letter, and that is really the question of the divided loyalty Mr. Pittman showed between Robinson Aviation and the authority. And again, this is not a knock on Courtney, but it is a knock on the governance model. I believe you pulled a string through. At the end of the day, for better or worse, and I'm happy to hear from the commissioner that that there's some contemplation to changing the way this governance model exists. I think that that's a smart move on part of the legislature and the governor, because the conflict that exists between the tenants and the authority is manifested in, these roles that we're talking about, manifested in the conflict between SAPA and the board, and it also is manifested in the election of 2022, where those that have a special interest in the authority play an outsized role in placing 3 members, a majority, at this table, and I recognize that that's going to happen again in 2026. I'm not so sure the lessons have been learned. Quite frankly, I was hesitant to say this, but in reading, while I give the state attorney quite a bit of credit for this lengthy report, I do know that one board member, I believe it was Mr. Clark, had opined to Mr. Pittman at one point in time, or to Mr. Blocker, I forgot, but in the context of the Sunshine Law violations, I believe that Mr. Clark says, well, I'm not worried about it because it's just going to result in a slap on the wrist. The resignation was not a slap on the wrist. Being charged was not a slap on the wrist. But the fact that the deferred prosecution did not prohibit these 3 defendants from running for office for this authority again, to me, was a misstep. But I don't fault Pittman for the issue around the dual employment. And I'm talking about Robinson, I'm not talking about DO and ED, I'm talking about Robinson Air versus the authority. I know because I've looked at the transcript. In January of 2024, when Top decides that he's going to lure Courtney here, Top tells the board, because Mr. Olson asked the question, what about his employment at the tower? And Top tells the board, I got it. You got access to the transcript. This is the January 12, 2024 transcript, where Top says his replacement has already been identified. The replacement is going to come in, the replacement at Robinson is going to be in at the end of the month. The exchange about the dual employment, so the board at that meeting knew that he was still at Robinson as he was onboarding as DO. In the February meeting, I believe it's Mr. Pittman now, who says, well, our candidate, she's in the Navy or she's leaving the Navy, and she's going to start on February 27th. So the impression that the board had was that he was leaving. And oh, by the way, this supports Blocker's sense that he was asking for an outside salary because he had left or was leaving Robinson. But the board believes now, based upon the January and February statements, that he's leaving Robinson at the end of February, no later. This question was never raised at the May 13, 2024 meeting about his status at Robinson, and we now know from the record that he was at Robinson until October, November 2024. So, Mr. Chairman, of Jennifer Leota's complaints, the one that I find most meritorious is the question about Courtney having a foot on the boat and a foot on the dock in terms of having 2 masters and dual loyalties. Now, that's been remedied. He no longer works at Robinson. But again, I can't lay that at his doorstep. I laid it at Jamie Top's doorstep, who recruited him. Jamie Top's doorstep for telling the board in January that he was leaving. And for the board, never revisiting the issue. If the board had just simply come back to the contract, perhaps this issue would have been resolved. So I apologize. I know that I took way more time, Mr. Chairman, than you had anticipated. I got a lot more to say. But I think you get the gist of it. Now I'm going to sum up by just going back to how I started this. I do really believe. So I've learned a little bit about the value of this asset, the gem, the 800 Northrop Grumman jobs, the significance of this facility to the users, to the government, and to the broader community. I get it. But this authority deserves a better governance model, because I don't think that it behooves these folks behind me or the broader community of the authority that this governance model isn't fixed. And as long as the model will allow those that have self-interest to sit in these seats, this model, this dysfunctional governance model is not going to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baca. If you don't mind, maybe just staying there, I'll start with our newest board member and work away. If there's any questions that you have about it, and then we can get into we'll get into some conversation between the board. Article.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Jerry?
I've got a couple.
Okay.
we take a brief recess?
We're not recessing. Let's go.
Dennis, during your investigation, we mentioned the 3 executive directors. Did you happen to look at their salary base?
We looked at Tops, and Tops, his salary was $225.
Okay.
Now, I do know, so along those lines, again, referring back to Blocker, he recalls from those discussions with Mr. Pittman that Mr. Pittman was saying, I have to be paid more than Top. Blocker says that Mr. Pittman actually had, done a bit of a market analysis for, other EDs in the surrounding area or here in Northeast Florida, which was part of, supporting his position for the salary demands he was making. I believe that, so I don't know this with clarity, but I believe that Harvey was at 180.
Okay. And one more question for you. And this is just what I've drawn from your brief. Do you find that Mr. Roberts or Mr. Pittman did anything immoral, unethical, or against the law?
Well, your question certainly, elevates me in a way that I can't accept. I'm not here to decide morals, okay? And I don't mean to be sarcastic about that, but I don't believe that the conduct that's alleged that it's unethical or illegal, okay? So I mentioned, Chad's urging to pay Barksdale's fees. Jennifer thinks that that's illegal, that he's acting as a procurement lawyer. I don't agree with that. I think that he was looking out for the best interest of the authority. So I don't believe, except for this issue that I'm ending on, the dual employment. The dual employment issue, at the time, in my view, was a problem. Florida law prohibits it. This authority's governance document prohibits it, but yet the board paid no attention to it. So of all the allegations, the one that I find, if you want to put an illegal designation on all of the allegations, it would be, at the time, the dual employment, but that's been remedied, in my estimation. He quit, I believe, in November of 2024, he quit the tower. Well, thank you for your question. And I didn't mean to be sarcastic. But
No.
I'm not in the business, as a prosecutor, I'm not in the business of morality. It's either you violated the law or not. Now, I like motive. I like to look at motive, but thank you for your question.
And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have any questions.
Surprise.
Comments, yes, but no questions.
And I think you just hit probably the one I was most interested on, which was, there's some opining, which is good, potentially about governance model, but I thought the focus was strictly, was Chad Roberts involved in illegal or unethical behavior, and was Courtney involved in illegal or unethical behavior? Simply yes or no. And I understand there's a problem, but I think what I heard you say is yes, Courtney was involved in unethical behavior at the time that has since been remedied.
Well, so we're using these phrases, moral, unethical, illegal, interchangeably. So so I'm just telling you what the facts are. Okay, he served 2 masters. Well, and one of those masters was this authority. This job here, it's not a private sector job, even though some people behind me believe that this is essentially a private country club. This is a government entity, and it needs to be treated with the respect and adherence to the law because it's a government authority. And what the governing documents of this authority say is you can't have divided loyalty. You have to have one master. Now, it does, the authority's document does say, like, if he wanted to have an ice cream stand down the street that had, no nexus to the authority, they're not going to, the policy doesn't prohibit him having a second front that has no nexus to his day job. But how could you say that Robinson Air had no nexus to the day job? It is directly related to the day job. So you start with the governing document, which at the end of the day, the board is responsible for adherence to that governance document. Okay? I mean, he is too, but the board is in charge. Or should be. Okay? Then you look at Florida statute. The Florida statute is equally clear. If you are taking a government check, you can't have a second job that is in conflict with your governmental duties. And again, I don't mean to be disparaging, but we forget that this is a government entity. People are elected to these positions because it's a government entity. It's funded with millions upon millions of dollars of government taxpayer dollars. So we ought to be expecting the highest level of performance and ethics from the board and from its employees. So if you look at it, Mario, from the perspective of the governance document and the statute, the dual employment was a problem.
More comments and questions, but probably can reserve.
Two quick questions. With your investigation, I think one of the things taking from the letter and some of the other facts, you mentioned about Florida law prohibiting dual employment. Any comment in your investigation on the Florida law that kind of equally applies to board members having kind of conflicts of interest with the authority that they're sitting on?
I believe that's inherent in the governance document and in Florida law.
Okay. Did you uncover anything when you were investigating about that period of time about there being conflicts with board members and business dealings with the airport?
Where do you want me to start?
From the beginning.
Yeah, no, I mean, just if you found it.
I'm being somewhat sarcastic, but
Yeah.
look, I keep coming back, and even though I disagree with the final outcome here, I don't think it went far enough. I'm not arguing with the deferred prosecution. I think the deferred prosecution made sense, but I sat in this seat or supervisory role of a prosecutor's office for 20 years. I wouldn't have given just a slap on the wrist, as Dennis Clark predicted, without some prohibition for future conduct. Okay, so that was what is missing here. And it's my understanding, as I'm talking to people along the highways and byways, that some of the defendants in this case are already talking about running again in November. And I find that to be a problem. So Jerry talked about morality. From a moral perspective, I find that to be a problem. It's not illegal, it's not unethical, but I find it to be a problem. But if you read this report, and it's very well done, they talked to legions of people, many of whom are in this room. And what jumps off the page to me, on page 23 of the report, I'm going to quote, on or about December 30th, 2024, Pittman received a text message from defendant Leota requesting to meet with him about NFRA policy. Pittman stated that he, defendant Ludlow, and defendant Tucker met privately at the airport administration building outside of an official board meeting where they discussed changes in the airport T-hanger policy. Now mind you, this is December 2024. Ludlow and Tucker run unopposed. Her text to Blocker in June says changes are coming. And in December, so before Tucker is sworn in, as Mr. Bean was today, to sit on this board, in December, they're meeting with Courtney to talk about the T-hanger policy for the upcoming February board meeting. Defendant Ludlow told Pittman they wanted to discuss changes in the airport policy related to T-hangers. Defendant Tucker told him what Pittman was going to do from this point forward. So you got the newly elected board member telling him what he's going to do in terms of the T-hanger policy on a go-forward basis. They would let tenants know they were coming. Defendant Tucker stated.
Ms. Ludlow, you're disrupting this meeting.
Yes,
I'm going to
I
ask you
am.
not to, or we'll have to ask you to leave.
And again, I'm quoting from the state attorney's report.
Mr. Baca, if I can ask you another quick question on that, because I think the board's going to want to have some discussion before we need to move on. Aside from the dysfunctional governance model, and I think we all have we'll have to have some conversations about the oversight that the board has on things that get reported to us moving. I mean, that's the big takeaway. On other issues, kind of the enforcement mechanism, I kind of heard you say there was an allegation to that. Do you have any, other than board governance and oversight, any other recommendations as far as like what we should be implementing to maybe protect against some of this?
I do,
Okay.
and thanks for your question to remind me. So I believe, and why I said, a long while ago that I was happy that you were, analyzing the T-hanger policy. In my estimation, the T-hanger policy, whatever it is, so I know that there's a lot of constituents, a lot of stakeholders, if you will. So however you get to the T-hanger policy, whether it's amended, changed, throw it overboard, whatever you do with it, my strongest recommendation to you is twofold. That is clear and concise, takes into account the interest and the perspective of the users, but ultimately is in the best interest of the authority, because the authority is not just the users. The authority is a community asset. So the T-hanger policy should be clear, concise, it should be collaborative, but ultimately in the best interest of the authority. The other recommendation that I would make, only because of the conflict, the allegations of unethical and illegal behavior, and I've told this to Pittman and to Chad, that I think that them being the identified as the enforcers of the policy further drives a wedge between the users and the authority and the board. So in my estimation, to kind of saw off and soften the conflict, I mean, why is the executive director, principally responsible for enforcing the policy, which puts him in, or her, in direct conflict with his customers? Okay? So with that in mind, I'm recommending, I'm not looking to spend any more of your money, but I'm recommending that this board appoint, after the policy has been articulated, and it's clear, concise, collaborative, and in the best interest of the authority, and not just the users, that you appoint a director of compliance. Somebody that's totally independent, not a member of SAPA, not a user, somebody that's versed in FAA regulations, to be the director of compliance, and that person should report directly to the board, to the audit committee would be my recommendation, and not to the ED, not the Aviation Council, not even the General Counsel. So there ought to be a direct relationship between director of compliance and the audit committee. Now, I know, as I've had this conversation with Ms. Cash Chapman, she's the chairperson of the audit committee, but that's, I'm sorry.
No, that was me who.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You did not enjoy
Yeah, I'm
that
sorry.
statement.
Yeah, I didn't mean to visit that on Michelle, but right.
But go ahead.
Yeah.
No.
But that's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. I think, we'll probably give ourselves a chance if you want to take a seat.
Okay, thanks.
Stand in the hot podium again. Members, I think there's a lot to this. The individual briefings, I'm sure you had separate questions, and we only got a summary. The reason I asked Mr. Vacco to hold off on doing like an extensive report with line sites and all that is that will be an added expense to us. So my recommendation would be to just have him finalize his executive summary to send. Maybe allow us a chance to digest that a little bit more. and then make a determination as to next steps, whether we either need a full-fledged report with all of them, or we just want to jump into potential policy changes. But want to open it up. Michelle, you're looking at me, so I'll just give you the first chance if you want to. And then just on timing-wise, we can kind of try to limit this to less than 10 minutes or so. I think that'd be ideal.
I appreciate that. So I hope that after you guys had your individual meetings, you kind of got a glimpse into the past few years at this airport. I can assure you that the summary you were given today lacks a whole lot of history, as I'm sure you can all imagine. I know that a lot of us in this space lived this history out together publicly, and it was not always pretty. I think that, I don't know what happened in your individual conversations, but I do think it's important moving forward to remember that while certain things were not revisited during our board meetings, that did not necessarily reflect negligence on all of the board members not bringing that to the board meetings. I know that I joked a few months ago when you made a comment saying if you want something on the agenda, just have it added, and that was not always the case. And so not every board member was viewed equally at the board table. And I think that's a really important fact that you need to keep in mind as we look forward. I appreciate the idea of appointed seats here. That's something that I have been pretty vocal about for a long time. And so I appreciate that the county is looking into that. I appreciate that it was recommended today, and that's not just in my head, but that's a good idea. But it wasn't a secret that I wasn't necessarily for this investigation, because in my head, we are giving a whole lot of disgruntled and negative people continued power to our future. I joined this board a long time ago, and I did it to make a change. And I'm really looking forward to be able to make those changes as a full community. And so I would just encourage us to remember that what has happened in the past has happened. We've looked into the allegations. I think we can move forward. And I think that we should start to do that. There's a lot of history that does not need to be resurfaced again. Those of us that have trauma bonded on this board for the past 3 years are ready to move forward and make some changes. And I would appreciate if we could all get to that point. Thanks.
Any other board member?
I just got one comment on Dennis's recommendation on governance. And he's absolutely right. You're dead on, because when we were appointed, Mario and Nick and I and Daniel, we're asked if we have vested interest on this airport. And to me, the previous board, the 3 that resigned, everybody has an interest on this airport, regardless of how minor or how major it would be. And where's your loyalty going to lie? It's not going to rely on this good board. It's going to rely on your personal interest and everybody else that you're friends with and associated with on this airport. So dead on. And that's something that in law needs to be changed before you run for this office, period.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, this is a great first meeting, so thank you.
We like baptism by fire around here.
No, I agree with Michelle. Eyes forward. I think we asked our council for a summary report, not in great detail, just a summary report, so that the record is clear and folks can have the folks that aren't here today have an opportunity to review it. And then we review it, and then we determine whether there's any steps, but we don't do that today. Thank you.
So I do have one maybe point of, opposition to on the government side. I do like the idea of a law change or something to ensure ethics and no conflict. I agree with that. But the idea of taking local politics out of it, I'm fortunate to have been appointed by the best governor in the nation, as were a few of us. And local politics are messy, but I believe in politics on the most local levels. So the idea of us all being appointed by when we have a taxing authority, for instance, not that we've exercised it, but I think that it should be a locally determined. It is a political role, it is a mess, but maybe some sort of governance controls to ensure the lack of conflicts. So I'm not entirely opposed, but I think that we need to consider that before we, try to upend. I don't know that it would change the politics. It would just change who's in control of the politics. As far as the eyes forward, 100% agree. I think that I agree with Michelle that we give a lot of credibility to maybe sour grapes. I'd like to know what the cost of this effort was, but I would like an executive summary and to finish that. I agree the authority needs better. I believe that it also has been remedied, so I like the moving forward. I also do have, I think this also, highlights the importance of an executive search, which, we discussed whether we could just simply make Courtney's selection final. I'm fully supportive if Courtney becomes the executive director, but I think that should be the result of a search. And furthermore, I wanted to just opine briefly on the fact of the draft contract in May of 24 and then never being brought up again. We are under the exact same situation now and had the same situation, and I think you were surprised when we did not sign a draft contract that had been drafted, and we had the exact same motion fast forward a year and a few months. So, without, it'd be hypocritical for us to cast judgment on a prior board for not having addressed it when we are actually in the very similar existing condition right now.
Yeah, just on that, we did vote on the salary at least,
Yep.
So we got that. We've tried. So the point being, we're in a rock and a hard place because we can either say, if you don't sign a short-term contract, you're out, which that means we're going to rush into a new interim executive director and don't know what we're going to get, which is kind of what I said in October of last year when the former board member was pushing for that, is we need a captain for the time being. And so, I don't like having a month-to-month, at-will employment, but that's the card that we were unfortunately dealt with. And, we're doing an executive director search, and hopefully at the end of the day, we will have a set contract. Now, I don't know if there's been any progress in that at all, on getting an interim contract signed, but...
My point wasn't to condemn ourselves, but simply they were under the same situation with the dysfunction in the last board as well.
But I think we're eyes wide open.
Talk about it.
Yeah, we're talking
We
about
brought
it.
it here.
We're eyes wide open on it. We've got a plan.
Progress.
And I'm just going to end on this note, Michelle. This was, in my estimation, the final point of that. So if you go back to when I asked for this, it was, you had the allegations. The best thing for the airport moving forward is to look into them, address them, figure out what went wrong, what we can do better, and then move on as this new board. I'm happy that we've got a new board member who brings a lot of experience. We've got a full slate now of where we can put our heads down and put this airport on the right direction moving forward, not knowing what's going to happen in elections, and it could all be for naught, but at least we can put it on the right path. So with that being said, again, Mr. Vaca, thank you for doing the internal investigation. It sounds like just an executive summary is all that we need. General Counsel, you're trying to, you picked me over on this. So.
Point of information.
Yeah.
To be clear, while we don't have a contract, I believe where we left it off was Mr. Pittman and his counsel were not prepared to move forward at that time. We can pick that back up, but to Mario's point, we are in a different position this time as a board. You all did actually take up the contract. There was a declination of that contract, but the board did, per its governing documents, vote on and approve the interim salary. So I want to make very clear for the record that you have complied with your charter and your policy documents. It's just there is no contract. So I want to make that very clear for the record that it's similar, but this board has done and complied with its statutory obligations.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, can I add? I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
there was an allegation of cash payments that were made. I would like that run to ground, please.
Yeah, so I apologize that I gave that short shrift, but I thought that, you know, the other points that I made were more important, at least for today. But that would be also my recommendation, because I don't know how pervasive it is. I have receipts, so I know that it happened. I don't know where the money went or how it was employed. But most importantly, I don't know how pervasive it was.
And if I can just add to that, we do have an audit committee, so you'll be happy to know that. Mario's the chair, and I think one of the tasks of that was to take certain things like this or other audits. I know your position on audits, but I think this airport does warrant some audits in certain things to just make sure we're in compliance. But
Part of, I think, what was referred to in the cash payments, I think if you look back at the timeline, you'll find that the person responsible for that, that's kind of been a closed, investigated chapter at this point, just so you know it's not something that happened very recently or with the people that are currently in the seats at the airport now.
Well, that's a good clarification. It is not of recent vintage.
Okay.
Is there an action item on that for the audit committee?
No, I mean, you're chair, so I mean, when you have your first audit committee, maybe you've heard kind of a thought on a particular audit that could be done.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you could just, round out Mr. Bean's suggestion. So what precisely do you want me to do in that regard?
I think just as part of your executive summary, including kind of comment on that cash payment issue, so that then maybe it can go to the audit committee for an action item from there.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. I'm looking at my clock. I've got 30 minutes. Courtney, real quick on the staff reports. Really, how much time do you think you need on that?
Less than 10 minutes.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Let's do logo selection real quick. Hopefully it'll be a quick one. Courtney, if you want to take the lead on this one.
Yes. So we have three, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have three options. Ethan, you want to scroll down? We have three options presented to the board. And in the future, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation. So this is all
Towards the end.
Yeah. All the way down.
You can go to the end of it and then
Yeah.
2 slides.
There we go.
Yep.
Boom.
Now that we all have vertigo.
And so there's three options provided for the board. Option number 2 was the one we had discussed at December meeting, but we wanted to revisit this with inputs from the board. And because this is very important, this will represent the airport going forward. It'll be on billboards, T-shirts, hats, everything that represents this airport. This is our opportunity to rebrand, to move forward with the image, and I think that's part of the messaging that we've had this morning from Dennis Locker. It's about moving forward, and I think that's a sentiment that was shared amongst all 5 of you. So this is a part of that opportunity. Last year, we took steps to change the name. We hired Bowman & Company to be our marketing team, so they helped us. The next step after this logo will be selected is the rollout of a brand new website that is user-friendly, because I say myself, it is a pain to try to use this website, and I've used it for years. And so this is an integral step going forward. So here are the 3 options. We go on board, we go off to the side.
So I do want to say that option 2 was what was originally presented to us. I was not in that portion of our workshop, so I said I didn't love it and I wanted to look at it again. So option 1 is actually one that I had created just to give a general, here's what I mean. Let's take something airport or St. Augustine and turn that A into that. I'm assuming option 3 came from the company itself, which I love. I think it's very clear what that is, the tower, and that's kind of what I had envisioned and what I was looking for.
So you like option 3?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else?
I'm option 3.
All right, do we have a motion to approve option 3?
I so
Is
move
there
option
comment
3.
there?
Yeah, let's get a motion. So we have a motion on option 3. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, now any discussion or debate?
Yeah, I'm pretty critical of a lot, but when Bowman presented option 2, I do agree that the plane could be more prominent, but I do agree that there should be a period after the T in St. Augustine, similar to the others. But nonetheless, it was amazing how they tied it to the fort, the simplicity. I think for a logo, you want more simplicity, not something so detailed.
Can you tell that to the board realistically, without being told? Because I had no clue they had to talk. It looks like an upside down U with a check.
I like the subtlety of it. So, I mean, the other one, it's
All right, so where are you on option 3?
option 3 strongly against.
Okay. Any other discussion or debate?
I thought option 2 was just a check in the box. That's what I thought. Is that a plane? Is that what
That's
that
a
is?
plane at the
That's a
end.
plane, and that's representing the cupola on the fort.
Oh, okay.
But if you have to be told, I think it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I suggested edits to it as
All
well.
right, well, we have a motion seconded for option 3. If there's no other further discussion or debate, all those in favor of option 3 say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, motion carries 3-2. Option 3 is our new logo moving forward. All right. With that, we finally got to the most important part. Courtney says he needs 10 minutes. That gives us 15 to go through the T-hanger use policy. And I do want to give a chance because I see a lot of people that have hung back to talk. I'm going to put that reminder out there for everybody because now we're an hour and a half into the meeting on what the plan moving forward is. No vote today on the T-hanger policy. Courtney is going to notice in the next 2 weeks a workshop that will be open to the public to review kind of what is out there in the world as far as T-hanger policies. And for example, it goes from, I told Courtney, one of the airports that I looked at, the only thing you're allowed to have other than an airplane is a mini fridge, all the way to the others, which is just get approval from the executive director on what you want to put in other than the plane. So the gamut is wide. The FAA is non-committal on about most of the issues in our T-hanger policy, but it gives all the discretion to the airport. So in 2 weeks, in the next 2 weeks or so, there will be a workshop. Courtney will be there. General counsel will be there. We'll review. Kind of hopefully we'll meet in the middle on something that we can all, as Mr. Bacco mentioned, that is agreeable to the general aviation community, but also in the best interest of the authority and complying with the FAA and in line with what other airports in the state of Florida are doing, because we don't necessarily want to be on an island by ourselves with airport hangar policy. Excuse me?
Open to the public workshop.
That a publicly noticed workshop open to the public. Everybody can come, and then we'll get a report back on kind of where we're doing. The other thing that I would expect is that the draft policy would be presented again with plenty of time for us to get more emails and input from the general aviation community. I don't know about the other board members. I appreciated all the emails that I got. I responded to every single one of them because some of it was just, I don't like the policy. Why? You got to give me, you got to say more to that. So hopefully that'll be part of the workshop as well. But I do want to give 15 minutes for public comment. If you want to waive your time because there's going to be a couple, at least the 2 more opportunities, I'd appreciate that. But if you really do want to speak, we're going to, please limit it to no more than 3 minutes. So if you know how to do math, 3 minutes and 15, only so many people get to speak. So I'm just going on what was given to me in the order. Mr. Mike Grossberg, would you like to speak?
I'll waive my time.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Martin, I think you probably want to speak.
Okay. I've been attending these authority board meetings for over 20 years, and I would like to thank this board for your dedicated efforts to make our remarkable airport the best it can be. And to new member B, welcome to this new adventure with its challenges.
Thank you.
I want to also thank Executive Director Pittman and Aviation Authority Roberts for attaching the proposed agreements and background on FAA regulations, plus the rate proposals to the agenda for today's meeting to make it possible for me to be able to review and forward observation reports and provide a base for others to make input. I think having the what's being proposed, available, as Nick said, is very important. I had sent memos to the board and the attorneys regarding the proposed hangar use agreement, looking for inconsistencies and providing information gaps with historical education you do not have. I've also sent one on the subject of the executive director research, but I think that was very well covered today. I believe more information and input is needed from tenants before a vote. Mr. Primrose has made an excellent recommendation to put the hangar issue into a workshop. And again, thank you for remaining positive.
Thank you. Mr. Jose Riera?
Yes. I see that there's no court reporter here to report the minutes of a meeting, but Jose Riera, 133 Provenza Trace. Thank you for your time and your service. I used to be elected official at one point in time, so I know what you guys are going through. Going to what Councilor said here, better governance model. You as a new board, as I used to be in the corporate world, whenever a new president or vice president came in, he'd clean house and put new people that can do a better job. So I'm suggesting you look at the same thing. What do we have in the past? Why don't we just simply clean the house, start a clean, new slate, get it done properly, and comply with the new, better governance model? That's my comment.
Thank you. Mr. Bob Mulihan? And if I'm mispronouncing names, I apologize.
Close enough. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So as you said, my name's Bob Mellahan. I've been a hangar customer here for the last 20 years approximately. And first I'd like to thank the board for suffering through the long letter that I sent y'all. I appreciate you reading it if you actually got through it. With respect to your volunteer efforts, God bless you. For those staff members who are singularly agenda driven, we'll pray for you. And to the rest of the staff members who remain objective, we thank you. With respect to the upcoming, what you call it, not a board meeting, but the workshop, I don't think that you'll get an unbiased perspective from just these two gentlemen from that workshop. If the board members can't attend the workshop itself, I don't see how you would get a broad-based perspective on the issue. And that's all I got. Thanks.
Mr. Henry Warpy?
Henry Warp, resident, 20-year user of the hangar system here, multiple hangars. I got one 6 years ago for our Columbia aircraft. All I've got stored out there outside of the aircraft is a boat trailer with no boat on it. It's been used to haul fuselages of aircraft and wing parts and appendage and all this. So I'm told now I need to get that out. Even though I pay extra for the hangar space, that before previous administrations told me I could use it for a car or anything. Clean as a whistle, it's epoxy coated, American flag, the three prior retired, I'm one retired Marine, that own the aircraft are proud of the hangar, but can't believe I've got to go pay $385 a month to park a boat trailer somewhere else outside. I don't think that's right. I think we can make adjustments if you guys want to on what can and can't be used in there, but that seems to be a pretty easy request. But it seems like I've been put on notice now to, so I'll be glad to attend the meeting and discuss that, and hopefully we can work this out and everybody can be good neighbors and happy and proud of the airport.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brewer?
Good morning, Jan Brewer, tenant in one of the T hangars. So I want to specifically address the document that I sent each of the board members, and I also sent it to Mr. Pittman. There's several areas, I think, within the use agreement that still needs work, and I know you've been recommended by one of your councils here today to make sure everything's in favor of the board, and I understand in favor of the airport. But it seems to me that there's a couple sections that are heavily weighted in favor of the airport and does not take into account some of the tenants' concerns. One is the indemnification section. It basically absolves the airport of any responsibility. You can have one of your employees come into our hangar at any point in time without us knowing it. A ladder falls on my plane, you're not responsible for it. So I think the indemnification area really needs some work, some explanations on when you are responsible and when you're not responsible. As well, I think the termination clause. We've been out here at the airport for over 10 years. And during that time, we have experienced several weather events, including hurricanes. I was in a hangar, the door blew off the hangar. The airport didn't kick us out, which is what this termination clause says you can do. They worked with us to find us another hangar so that we could house our plane. So I think the termination clause needs work too. Because there's several, it's like any act of God, you can just say, okay, you're out of here now. And then where would you take your plane? So I do think that those two sections in particular need some work, as well as I'm still saying that potentially you need some definitions. I think that would help clarify a lot of the information in this document. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Brewer?
I hate to follow her. I just want to let you know. Anyway, just real quickly, and I won't take much time. I kind of agree with Bob. I think if the members of the board are present, not that I don't trust these guys at all. It's just I think everybody's out in the open. Everybody's hearing the same thing. I think that's a good idea. These numbers you're throwing around. It's no wonder. I mean, one of the things I saw raising the rent. I was a school teacher, so I'm not privileged to aviation kind of money. Usually, I'm lucky to be here. But I really would hope that you would consider not some people are out here in aviation and doing the best clear, to me anyway. But I would do that, and also we're making a lot of we're all, you can see everybody's here. We're all interested in doing the best for our airport, but when we say or whatever to another work.
They have to be a unanimous vote to receive that penalty. I suggest that the board do this moving forward. An eviction from this airport is actually an execution. And at the last meeting, someone was evicted from this board with only 2 members present other than the chairman. And I would suggest that they modify policy going forward, that any time an eviction appeal comes forward, that the board be a full board of all 5 members, not just 3. Secondly, another event took place at that 3-member only board, and I applaud the chairman, way overboard applauding the chairman for his attempt to direct the other members there regarding voting on commercial activity from the T's. If a person who is a commercially licensed pilot stores his aircraft in a T hangar, but yet takes his aircraft out alone, flies to, I believe the chairman used Texas as an example, flies to Texas and engages in instruction or an air show, which several of the tenants do that, and then flies back alone to his T hangar here at St. Augustine, he's subject to eviction. I think that's really, really bad, because that means that all the air show people here, no more competing in air shows, no more participating in air shows for which there's any remuneration, including those pilots that take off and leave and go attend events like Young Eagles programs, where they are remunerated in fuel. That is receiving a payment, even though it's only liquid. I think the board needs to readdress that which you already voted on and possibly repeal that until such time it can be more clearly defined. Because flying out of here in your aircraft alone and doing something at any other Delta, I assume if you want to make it here at the Delta, that's fine. But if you go to the Delta at Craig or Tampa or Orlando and you engage in commercial activities and then fly back here alone, that should be a hands-off for this board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Ludlow.
Yes, and this is going to be a surprise, I'm sure. What I wanted to bring up I would like to bring up many things, however, would not be appropriate at this time. What I would like to bring up is to make sure that the board is aware of the actions of the interim executive director. I was, when you had a hangar use committee meeting with Courtney, I was uninvited to be on that committee because I made Courtney nervous. I want the board to be aware of that, and is that how you want to govern your committees?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that was it on the T-hanger use. So the one thing maybe I'll ask is, Courtney, maybe just figure out from the board members too. Mr. Brewer, you make a really good point about the timing of the workshop. We do want to make sure that folks are available. So perhaps it's better to have it in the evening maybe or late afternoon to give people a little bit more time to come. We would like to have as best participation as we can. Okay.
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Roberts.
I thought there was one.
There's one other public comment. I just want to.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we close the loop on the T-hanger use.
Yep.
Mari, I know you said you potentially wanted to have some conversation regarding the policy now, or are you okay maybe waiting until?
We can wait, but mine was very kind of similar towards Mr. Brewer's with the fact that a lot of people took off today. And it was pretty clear to me that in 2 hours there was no way to get through everything that we had. And it's difficult to find time with all of our schedules where we'd be available. So, I mean, I have a strong recommendation that we take the time at a board meeting to take action, close this loop so it's not a continued source of uncertainty.
If I had to guess, the March board meeting, looking at what is unfinished business and what I know coming as new business, this might be the only thing other than maybe an update on the executive director search that will be discussed in March. So we might be in a good spot anyways to do exactly that, Mario. So, all right. If there's no other comments on this, we'll quickly move to executive director report and staff updates.
Yes, I just wanted to update everybody on there'll be a new process when it comes to paying your bills. We're trying to upgrade to modern technology, so you get a notification on your cell phones to say, hey, you can pay, and it'll be cheaper for you, to save you some money in reference to having credit card payments and things of that nature. So we're upgrading to that. We're changing the way you'll do work orders. Instead of having to call the front desk and make a complaint or catch a person with an orange shirt on and say, hey, there's something wrong with my hanger, you'll be able to go on the application that you'll be downloaded on your phone. So we're trying to modernize your experience here at the airport authority. And so those are the bigger things that we got going on. And what I'll do is send out an executive letter to all tenants so that we know some of the things that we got going on. We were talking about doing that once a quarter. So I think right now would be a perfect time due to the time remaining at this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I believe General Counsel, you had a quick update for us?
Quick update on the FRS situation. All the data has been turned over to FRS and our findings and the corrections. They're now working with Ms. Connie to get those corrected and calculate the penalties. My understanding is once those were turned over, interest stopped. So we're waiting to get the calculations and we'll double check those and get this behind us.
All right, thank you. Mr. Roberts.
Oh, good, thank you.
All right. Seeing no other on that, let me, before I forget, because Mr. Booth has been waiting here, do you want to speak very briefly? And
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Edward Booth with the Marks Gray Law Firm in Jacksonville. Today I'm here on behalf of Roberts Aviation, a 15-year commercial tenant of this airport. With me is Catherine Roberts, the operations manager. Her husband, Ian Roberts, has all the FAA credentials and certificates. They also run a fixed-based operation in Cincinnati, Ohio, with an accompanying jet repair station. They were recruited to come to this airport 15 years ago and open a business that could maintain heavy business jets, and they have done admirably over the past 15 years. From the very start, they needed more space, particularly hangars that would accommodate larger jets. They're currently in a position of having to turn away clients with, this is race car driver Mario Andretti's Falcon 2000 that won't fit in their current hangar. There is commercial hangar space that should be available right now because the people that are occupying it don't show up on the lease and are storing car collections and fishing boat fleets and that sort of thing. We only ask for the opportunity for some fair play. We asked Ed Wilner 15 years ago for more space, and it's documented in a board meeting minutes. We should be number one on the list for commercial space. We were shocked to learn we're number 23. We don't know how that happened, but we have been loyal, dues-paying members of this airport community and simply want to expand the business. I have asked the board, not the board, but management repeatedly to sit down with us and talk, and yet no one has ever been willing to schedule this. We're prepared to go forward with litigation under Part 16 with the FAA to get them to resolve it, but we have an obligation to engage in informal dispute resolution. I have asked the legal team to set this for a structured mediation with a Supreme Court certified mediator, and I would like to get it on the schedule books without delay. But if it's going to be kick the can down the road indefinitely, we need to proceed with our rights under Part 16 because we're losing business. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. It's my understanding that there's some, Ms. Roberts, if you want to quickly.
Yes, there are two compliance inquiries in progress that bear on the ability to have additional space or not, that we thought mediation on the backside of those would be better. Additionally, an issue for the board to take up is an RFQ process for the hangar capacity as it may come available. And that's for another day, but it all bundles up into this.
All right. If I could just ask is to please work with Mr. Booth and keep the board updated as those other issues start finding a resolution at all. I think that would be good.
And one that I talked with Mr. Pittman about, frankly, I heard number 1 versus number 23, and if I'm not mistaken, it's not a first come, first serve on that. So the RFP would be probably beneficial. But I'd also ask with our new website that the T-hanger waiting list be public in order, and then maybe we have an alphabetical order so there's no confusion about somebody being in line on the commercial space.
Appreciate that. With that, the only thing on the agenda was board member comments. So if anybody has any, all right. If not, we're going to adjourn, and I would welcome everybody to join us at the ribbon cutting of the new T-hangers, which will start at 11.